video, I will open your eyes to what is actually happening to Bitcoin right now, and it will blow your mind. And prove once and for all that the battle of the baby bulls versus the baby bears is about to reach its climax, its peak, its ultimate bust. So sit down, grab your favorite drink, and hold on tight, because this simply could not get any bigger. Right now, we're going to be diving into some of the most completely mind-blowing charts for Bitcoin that exist on planet Girth. So starting off in the immediate short term, we are still potentially, there's been no invalidation of a potential dumpulation down to the level we've been talking about for weeks. But that's not what I want to spend this video on, and that is absolutely not what's most important here. Basically, though, I do want to preface the video and start off by just simply saying this is still a very realistic target, and it hasn't been invalidated yet. But what I'm going to show you, to me, is just, this is like inarguable, completely insane data where, it's okay to be, in my opinion, it's okay to be bearish over the next week or so, right? That's not what I'm talking about at all. But if you look at the charts that I'm about to show you, and if you have just been analyzing it even yourself, and you think that Bitcoin's going to be dumping for the next few months, the next 6 months, even year, and going below 15K, I just think it's completely absurd. I think it makes zero sense. And I think the only way that you can arrive at that narrative or arrive at that conclusion is to be in complete denial about what's happening. And you have to be completely only looking at these markets with emotion. The exact opposite of what everyone will tell you you should be looking at these markets with. So starting off first, I think it's so important to highlight every single time in history, going back over 10 years, that the Bitcoin monthly RSI bottomed and then crossed back above this yellow line here. Every single time that it's happened, it marked the end of the bottom period, of the bottom of the bear markets, and the beginning of the transition, nice, to a bull market. Okay, we exited that range about 2 months ago. So it's not like this just happened like over the weekend or something. We have had a fair amount of time to digest this and really look at this. And in the meantime as well, as I talked about here, Bitcoin's monthly MACD is about to have its first positive momentum cross since the last bull market. Since here, before we started the bull market. Okay? Look, I mean, this is the MACD. You can see this is telling us on the monthly chart, we're about to erupt. The RSI is actually, if we go on this chart, the RSI is actually in a range lower than the previous 3 times, meaning we don't, it's very clear to me we don't need to go any lower, right? We've gone lower than the previous 3 times, after which the bull markets began. You can see here back in January of 2012-ish, or really beginning in October of 2011, we stayed in this range for, the bottom range for about 6 months, where the RSI dipped very extremely low, traded sideways around the 49 line, and then bounced into a bull market, right? It took time. I'm summarizing it like that took time there. Same thing happened here. January of 2015, or even the very end of 2014, same thing. Dipped down to about 42 on the RSI. If we zoom in, you can see it here. 42 on the RSI. When it crossed this yellow line, erupted. Same thing here back in, and we can show you, it correlates on the charts. You can see it also, after this happens, it does the same thing. Here, back in December of 2018, it went to about 44 on the RSI. Here, we went all the way down to under 40 for the very first time in history on the monthly RSI. So extremely low. And we crossed just a couple of months ago above this yellow line here. And, if history is any guide, then what we should be seeing is exactly what we have seen every single time it's happened in the past. When we exit this zone that I have boxed off here. Up, 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 up. So there's absolutely a case to be made that, okay, maybe we trade sideways and get a little dump in the short term, something like that, right? I think that makes plenty of sense. But to look at this and say we're going to do something, because believe it or not, there are people that think that we're about to do like this, right? There are people that think we're going to do some of this. Okay. Historically, if history is telling us anything, that's not going to happen. And people also make the argument, well, just wait for the recession to hit. So just because the president changed the definition of a recession like a year ago doesn't mean we're not in a recession. We're in a recession, okay? If that's not obvious to everybody on the planet, I don't know what to tell you, really. It's very clear. Things haven't been looking too good for the past year or so. Just because we still see unemployment very low, if you look at one metric and you hone in so much on that single metric, I think that that's going to be a very big costly mistake. Eventually, those numbers will rise. By that point, I think it'll be too late for most people to realize, I was blinded by looking at this one number that I ignored everything else that was so obvious. And before we continue with more of these charts, let's take a look at these. So Trader Tardigrade on Twitter talking about the correlation between Bitcoin and the U.S. 20-year government bond yields. Every time that it goes up, Bitcoin moves sideways historically, and when it's down, Bitcoin goes up. And it's possible. We might have some more room to move up, but it is also possible here that, when it starts moving down, that can initiate Bitcoin to really start pumping. I think that would line up with maybe a couple months from now. I don't, as you can see on this chart too, it's possible that we're not quite there yet where this starts dumping and Bitcoin starts pumping. So again, potentially still more room for a macro sideways, which could still range between 25 to 35K even, just not massive upside. Mags, the scalping pro on Twitter, talking about Bitcoin's 4-year bull cycle remaining on track. This, he's saying, is a reaccumulation phase before continuing upwards. He's just asking, will it mimic any of the previous ones? I personally think it'll be, as always, a little unique. It might be closer to one than the other. But ultimately, as we get through this phase here and we begin the next bullish breakout, I think it's very clear what trajectory is more likely than not. And I think most of the massive dumping very clearly is in the past, is behind us, at least for the next couple of years. CryptoCon talking about this, which is very similar to actually a chart that I want to pull up as well that I've been talking about for the past couple of weeks. But perfect retest at the top of the MA ribbons, a previous catalyst for massive bull rallies, while fear of lower prices and a recession ramp up, he's more bullish than ever. And again, I personally feel better and better about these scenarios of a bullish continuation over the next 6 months being true, the more people I hear in the comments and other people posting videos that are very bearish. I think it's necessary because there are absolutely still so many people that just do not believe there's a chance in the world that the worst of the worst is over. There are so many people that still believe there is so much worse to come. And that is evidenced by the fact as well that every single time Bitcoin drops $500 to a range even that we were at like a week ago, the amount of people that'll say, like, they start tweeting, they start making videos about, okay, this is it, this is the one, where it's really everything's going to start collapsing, and the engagement goes crazy because there's so many people, creators and or influencers and everyone else that also just still believe that we're headed to 10K. They believe that, absolutely, and that is necessary in my opinion for that to be not true. Okay, I don't think we're going to hit 40 or 50,000 US dollars if everyone believes that we're going to hit 40 or 50,000 US dollars. And thankfully, right now, not everyone does. I know it might seem like it to some people, but you just look at some of the numbers of the engagement that bear posting still gets. It is popular still to be mega bearish, believe it or not. And Mustache, the crypto prof on Twitter, talking about this blue line EMA being in the positive area, showing how much Bitcoin rises, and we're about to get this cross here. So bullish signs, I mean, really there are bullish signs everywhere. But just pivoting to these charts as well, I want to highlight the DXY, in my opinion, is about to run into massive resistance here. We have been watching this for the past couple of years. This is a level where the DXY continuously gets rejected. Okay, found support here as expected. Now I personally am expecting this to get a rejection over the next couple of weeks there. Also, the stock market, for example, NASDAQ and the SPX recently hit new highs, put higher highs instead of lower highs for the very first time since the beginning of the year. And just a continuation of this. So actually, I guess these are the first higher highs we saw back in February, and here is a continuation of that, where previously it was all lower highs, and that's what this trend line represents. So if the tides start shifting for the stock market, Bitcoin will benefit. It's very, very correlated in that sense, I believe, and I think that might be the case for a long time. Looking at Bitcoin's weekly chart, one of the reasons we're finding so much support here as well, we've been on for the last 3 weeks, just right exactly on the 200-week moving average. After flipping it for the very first time since falling below it back in like June of 2022, so about a year ago. This was very strong resistance for like the past year, and now it's flipping this as support. Now, again, you can also even make the case for this being like a inverse head and shoulders type pattern, with this, the 200 week even being like the neckline. Now we're getting a retest before completely busting off. That is a very, first of all, it's a macro pattern. It makes perfect sense. It's also in a wider context even stronger, like 2-year-long falling wedge, where we initially had that retest here. Here we go here, and before continued, not that high, but before continued upside. Okay, bringing us even to the high 30s or even low $40,000 range over the next couple of weeks and months. So, I mean, to me, this is just looking at this chart as what's most obvious, and what's unbiased as well. Now, obviously, right now I am bullish looking at these markets. But really, I look at everything from both sides, and I watch other people who are extremely bearish. And everyone that's extremely bearish, every tweet that I see being extremely bearish, are just reaching so much. Because technically, you can paint a narrative for anything you want. If you really, really look at things, you can find a case to be made. This is going to be extremely bad for the markets or extremely good for the markets. But the path of least resistance, or the path where you have to take less and less leaps to really make a case, is usually the one that makes the most sense and is more correct. So when you have people posting extremely bearish charts where you just have to extreme cherry pick everything to get a bearish narrative, that's what you have to do right now, unfortunately, for people that want to be very bearish. So technically, yes, you can paint the most bearish picture on the planet where Bitcoin goes down to $1,000, $100, $10. You can make that case, and you can draw some lines to make it look like that. But all I'm saying is that you have to reach infinitely more right now than you have to reach to show Bitcoin not doing that and going up to 30,000 and going up to 35,000 and going up to 40,000. As I said, though, I personally don't think we're going to be breaking new all-time highs this year. I don't think Bitcoin's going to break 70K this year. Okay. So, while I do think over the next couple of months, Bitcoin will be bullish, I don't think it's going to be something like life-changingly bullish yet. I still think we're way too early in the pivot from bear market to bull market for that to be realistic, because also when you look at any of these long-term charts, okay, for example, this one, as we're pivoting into the beginning of these bull cycles, it takes a while for these gains to ramp up. It takes a while for things to start getting explosive. So this is just the beginning. This is the point, in my opinion, where entries are still optimal for long-term gains. But as I said, we're at the beginning of that. So it's still going to require patience for at least another couple of months, in my opinion. And if you're interested in trading, take advantage of massive bonuses by signing up specifically below with Femex and BitGet. Specifically, when you sign up with Femex, you can earn free XPT simply by trading anything. Currently, I'm up roughly on these long positions, a little over 17,000 USDT or USD. And as I said before, if we do get that pullback, which I think is absolutely realistic, if we do get a scenario where we come down to these prices, as I said, in the short term, which I still think is completely reasonable for this to happen, if we wick down there, then I personally would be entering or adding more to longs, not the opposite. I would be adding more to my longs. That's just what I'm doing, just my opinion, because I think that the bull case for the next 6+ months is way too strong to risk trying to catch. Could we go lower? Sure. Could it be for like 2 days or something? Yes. And so that's so risky to me, is that even if we did have some sort of big breakdown, I think the only possible way, which is still very slim chance in my opinion, I think the only possible way that would happen is something in a very short-lived, it would be a very short-lived thing. It would be hard to trade because it could happen it'd be hard to tell when, it would be hard to tell exactly how much, and it ultimately wouldn't matter that much if it then just bounced back up to where it was, a day or two before that, and then continued up. So the risk is just exponentially higher, in my opinion, on shorting Bitcoin right now than it is longing, especially if you look at this on a week-to-week basis. If you're trading the minute time frames, then I don't have any advice for you. I've never traded on, well, maybe when I was, maybe like my first year in crypto, I tried trading on a minute chart, and I can tell you how that went. It didn't go very well, obviously. But without any further ado, that's it for me.